Okay guys, this is a continuation of my Saturn-Pluto conjunction 2020 predictions, which included economic predictions, also things about currencies, Bitcoin, and the battle between the old and the young. And this particular section was about the energy crisis and the infrastructure crisis, which I feel is coming. I was watching the news on the Paris Air Show, and they said the next big thing will be electric planes. So they won't be filling up with fuel, they're going to be powering up with electricity. So let's just look down the line. 7 years, everyone's being steered towards having electric cars. We're going to have electric planes. They're building a second runway, or a third runway at Heathrow, so obviously they're expecting plane travel to continue increasing. I don't see that going down. And they're going to be tall, and the population's going to continue to increase with everyone using more power, plus 5G. The 5G transmitters are going to have to be put every sort of 100 meters, because that's how 5G works. It doesn't work from a central tower that's maybe one per town. They have to be placed at regular intervals in every street because they're 1 millimeter rays and they don't travel very far. Can you see that's going to take a huge amount of energy, not only to fill a whole country with a 5G network of that many transmitters will take a huge amount of energy, but so will they on a daily basis in order to transmit be using energy. So all I am saying here is think of all the things I've just said that are going to take more energy, much more energy, more pressure on the grid. Every car and aeroplane that now relies on fuel is suddenly going to be needing electricity, and it's going to draw on our grid. Where are the new power stations being built? Even if they finish Hinkley, which is nowhere near finished, most of our other nuclear reactors in the UK are old. Most of them around the world are old. They should be decommissioned after 25 years. Most of them are over 36 years old. In this country, they're very old. They really should be coming out of commission. What's replacing them? Wind power? Some sea power or wave power? I don't know where all this energy is going to come from. There are no big coal-fired power stations being built. There's only Hinkley that's a nuclear being built. The sustainable green energy is in its infancy, and yet we're going to be putting all this pressure on the grid. Where is all the energy coming from, and why is no one asking that very, very important question? I did read an article online where a professor was saying that there's just no way the grid can cope, but she's a lone voice of sanity. So while we go headlong into this supposedly utopian world where everything suddenly powers up with electricity, that electricity has to be created and pumped around the grid. What's going to happen? When there's a shortage of supply or a constant supply but a massive increase in demand, only one thing happens: prices go through the roof. So that can only mean fuel poverty. In its extreme, I could see this as reducing us basically back to feudalism, because so many people would be spending the vast amount of their income on their energy, on their electricity, and having very little other disposable income. Sure, I guess that would cut down on air travel and pollution in that way. But I think many people haven't thought through this green agenda and how absolutely scary it is, and what it means for the level of control and the inhibition it's going to mean for all our lives. But what I wanted to say there is the energy infrastructure across the world is in crisis. In China, they've invested hugely in their green energy, but it's not actually delivering. They're mainly having to still build more coal-fired power stations in order to increase their energy. So this is another problem which I think is epitomized by the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, and also Uranus in Taurus, which speaks to infrastructure, electricity, and a crisis in terms of the generation of electricity. You guys who watch me in South Africa will know the joke of skielik is hier liggies uit, which means suddenly the lights went out. And that's what happens often in South Africa. They have these power outages that happen at random times. They call it load shedding, and everyone's got kind of used to it, where you get an email and they'll tell you, oh, well, sadly today between 2 and 6 at night, you'll have no electricity. But of course, very hard to run a business and conduct a life like that. And at least South Africa is generally not a cold country, so people can regulate their temperature in winter okay. But it's quite ridiculous. I know that friends of mine joked that they put their Sunday roast in, and suddenly they had one of these wonderful installments of Skillik is hier liggies uit, and that was Christmas cancelled. I think that's where we're heading in this country. It's another example, what I said, of the Chernobyl that we're going through now, which everyone is in denial, and the middle class is in denial about. I despair at the media, as I think they take the surface level of everything and never look to knock-on effects, look to the domino effects, and look further. So while they were very happy to report about these electric planes, they failed to talk where this electricity is coming from. So again, that's another thing that has to be tackled in Saturn-Pluto. The important thing to say about the Saturn-Pluto conjunction is, I think it's going to cause a lot of people to have a bump. It's going to call a massive reality check for a lot of people, and that could wake up certain idealistic people on the left who are currently away with the fairies with this green stuff and are not thinking things through, to kind of wake them up. And that's part of the reason why it is also going to contribute to people being more, conservative, common sense minded as they begin to tackle more and more real life problems and understand how our current administrations all over the world have not been attending to the basics. They've been totally carried away with their social engineering projects and their mass migration projects where nothing has been thought through. No plans have put in place for this huge increase in population, for the cost of it, for the infrastructure required, and this is now going to be payday. So watch out for next year in the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Watch out for the banks, the massive pressure on the euro possibly beginning to go into its final years and not be sustainable anymore, and unfortunately more austerity, but this should lead to a restructuring of the economy and the world economy along lines which would be much more common sense conservative.